So we're gonna call this series Project Invisible Shield. And today is gonna be like the first installment of that because we're gonna be installing the Uniden R3 radar detector. Part 2, hopefully, we'll be installing laser jammers, which I'm pretty excited about. So I picked up this Uniden R3 radar detector for my Civic Type R because, as you may or may not know, the Civic Type R is a really fast car, despite what the 0 to 60 numbers say. It is faster than you would imagine. Ultimately, the other day I was passing somebody, speed limit was 70 miles an hour. They were going about 65. By the time I got around them and the car in front of them, I was doing 97 miles an hour. I didn't even realize it. And I was like, crap, I need a radar detector. So I went to YouTube, just like you guys are probably doing with this video, to see, kind of what would be a good option for a radar detector. I didn't want anything that was crap, but I didn't want to spend a boatload of money. So I picked up the Uniden R3, which is a way more affordable option to like the Escort Max 360s. But after watching everybody's testimonials about the Uniden R3, everybody was getting notified miles sometimes before they get to the source of the radar. Now, we're not going to go into a full review of this today, but I wanted to kind of just go over a couple things that I noticed about this when I was watching reviews on it. Number one, it had the longest range almost of any other radar detector. It outperformed all the high-end Escort, like the Max 360 and other models. And I thought that was amazing considering this was like less than half the price of those. So the range was definitely a huge plus for me. The other thing I liked about it is it does have GPS on it. So anytime you're going by any false alarms on your daily commute, you can mark them. It just totally ignores them from there on out. It's like, okay, cool, this is always a false alarm, we'll start ignoring them. And you can also mark certain spots where, speed traps are. In case they're running some kind of super new technology, it will remind you ahead of time so that you can slow down because it's typically a speed trap. So I thought that was pretty cool. Now, radar detectors aren't 100% foolproof. You got to use common sense with them. But as my dad always told me, common sense isn't so common. There's 3 ways that you can wire up a radar detector in your car. You could use cigarette lighter method, which has a big old cord that comes down right in front of you, which number 1 is a huge giveaway that you got a radar detector. And number 2, it's just annoying. Now, in regards to hardwiring it, we got 2 methods with the 10th Gen Civics. Now, if you have a 10th Gen Civic Type R, you're not going to be able to do this first method, but you can hardwire it into your mirror system. Now, if you have one of the SmartLink mirrors, you can just wire it right into there. Everything's good to go. But with the Civic Type R, this may be the case with the SI. I'm not 100% sure on the 10th gens. You're gonna have to go do a fuse tap into the fuse box, and don't worry, it's definitely not as difficult as you think. And hiding the wires, definitely not as difficult as you think. I didn't have to pull hardly anything back. I was able to tuck all the wires away, and you can't even tell that it's hardwired. Now, for the mount that I'm gonna be using, it's a little bit different. I've been seeing a ton of reviews on the blend mounts. I almost bought one of the blend mounts, but the blend mounts were like over $100. And after paying a couple $100 for this and then getting the wires and all that, I just didn't want to spend $100 on a mount. But I found this really cheap alternative that was like $30 on Amazon. And we're gonna see if that works just as well. Make sure it doesn't do all this when we're driving and stuff. So we'll find out about that here in a minute. But let's go outside, get this installed. And just so you know, I will throw links to everything that we're using in this video today. That way, if this is something you want to pick up and install into your car, or if you have a 10th generation Honda Civic, you can get all the wires and everything. And I'll also include the wires for the mirrors as well, if that's how you're going to wire it up. So really, depending on what kind of car you have, you might be able to hardwire your radar detector right into your mirror. However, the Civic Type R doesn't have one of those electrical mirrors that has all the buttons on it. This is just an analog mirror. But if you do have one of those smart mirrors, there are wiring kits that will allow you just to piggyback off of the power that goes to your mirror. I'll put a full list of everything I'm using in this video today, including this mount right here. This mount comes from, I forgot the brand of it, but it's an off-brand to blend mount. And one of the reasons I wanted this one, I wanted to try it out, was blend mounts are like $100. And I paid, I think $25 or $35 for this mount. And I'll be honest with you, as I've been driving around with this Uniden on here, it just slides right on. Like, it doesn't move when I'm driving. Whereas the suction cup mounts that came with it, they move quite a lot. So I just wanted to show you the mount, and I wanted to show you that there is another way to hardwire it, just depending on what kind of car you have. But today, essentially what we're gonna be doing is we're gonna take this cord right here. It's gonna plug in on this side over here. Then we're gonna run this cable up behind the mirror through this headliner all the way down over here. And then we're gonna use a fuse tap
just to tap right into the fuse box. The only wire that we will see is the one that comes from right here up to the headliner. Now there are a couple of pieces you can use that stick onto your windshield that will make it look really beautiful. There won't be any wires. I don't have one yet. I'm gonna order one, but I'll make sure to link that down below as well. All right, so depending on what kind of radar detector you have, it may plug in on the left or the right side, but for the Uniden R3, it's gonna plug in over here on the left side, just like this. And then I'm just simply gonna take this cord up and I'm just gonna push it very gently back here behind the headliner. You notice I'm not even moving the headliner. I am just simply pushing it up until we get all the way over here to this side. And as you can see, we can get the little thing that will actually make it a lot easier to hide this wire, but there's really not that much wire here to hide. But for me, I mean, honestly, that looks so clean, I'm not even gonna stress about it. I'm gonna try to go in right here across this top line and then come down this door sill over here under the weather stripping and then underneath to the fuse box. And I'm gonna be using this little panel lifter right here. It's a soft plastic one. I actually picked this one up from Acuity Instruments. I'll be sure to put a link down to these below as well. So we're gonna finish feeding this through. Then we probably might not even need this panel lifter. I'm just seriously just tucking it in. We might need it a little bit. And you just use this little panel lifter right here just to tuck your wire. I want it to kind of be pushed down enough though, so that you don't see any separation. Because if it's up too high, it kind of pushes the plastic out and then you get a little bit of a gap. Now this will work on any 10th gen Civic, but once you're here, you can pull back this weather stripping a little bit and we can finish feeding this through. And then we can come right on through to this side. And we're just gonna tuck this wire all up in here. And if you pull back the stripping enough, you'll see the edge of the plastic. And then that's essentially where we're gonna be putting this, is behind the plastic. And so now we're gonna continue this all the way down. And so once we get to about right here, then we're gonna loop it underneath here and then we can get into the fuse box. And then I'll show you exactly how you get the fuse taps all aligned and which fuse you should tap into. Given that you have a 10th gen Civic, every car might be different. So you might wanna look up your own make and model on which fuse tap you should use. All right, so this is the fuse panel on the Civic Type R. I'm gonna be tapping into the accessory panel, and I'm gonna be tapping into, and the way you can find that is right here on the inside is a little bit of a guide, so you'll know which one that you're gonna be tapping. But like I mentioned, I'm gonna be tapping into number 1, which is gonna be the 10 amp that's all the way closest to the car. The only thing we gotta figure out is which side's positive and which side's negative, and I'll show you that here and coming up. But first, I need to show you how you actually set up your fuse tap. When I ordered the fuse taps, it came with 3 sizes. You got basically a large one right here, you got a medium one, and I believe we're gonna be using the smallest one. And so of these 3, we're gonna be using this one right here. And you notice it has a black bar between the 2 prongs, whereas these 2 don't. This is the one we're actually gonna be using because this is the only one that the factory fuses actually fit in. If you have a 10th gen Civic and you can't find your fuse puller, it's in the fuse box under the hood. Once you pull the lid off, turn the lid over, and that's where your fuse puller will be. I had no idea. And so you're gonna pull out the fuse from underneath the dash that you're gonna be replacing this fuse tap with. You're gonna take your OEM factory fuse and you're gonna place it into the bottom right here. So when your prongs are down, so you just take your factory fuse and you're gonna put it in right there. In the package that these fuse taps came with, it did come with an extra 5 amp fuse. However, there are some spare fuses under the hood, and I'm just gonna go ahead and use another 10 amp fuse instead of this one. So this is what the underside of the engine bay fuse box looks like. This is the lid that goes to it. And this is also, like I mentioned earlier, this is where your fuse puller is gonna be located as well. So we're gonna take this extra 10 amp fuse here. We're just gonna pull it out like that. And then we're gonna stick it right into the top one, right up here, just for a little bit extra security. Then we can place our fuse puller back in here because we're not gonna need it anymore. And then we're gonna put that back under the hood. Basically what we gotta do is we gotta crimp this one with this one that comes from the Hardwire Kit. The connections are different, so I'm gonna actually clip this and I'm gonna strip it and then crimp it together right here, if you guys can see that. Let me show you real fast. Got that. We're gonna take our strippers here. Okay, Now we're gonna twist these together, and then we're gonna put it right into here. And then I'm gonna hold it in place, just like this, and then I'm gonna crimp that together and give it a little bit of a tug to make sure that it stays in. And we are now tapped. So once we get this connected, then we gotta find a place to ground it. So we're just gonna ground this. We'll look for a bolt location and I'll make sure to show you where to do that. So this is kind of the current situation that I have right here. I simply just pulled these 3 tabs on this side and that just let this dangle so I could access the fuses. I don't know how well you can see this. There's a bolt right here and that's what we're gonna attach our ground wire to. So now we just need to take this and plug this into the existing fuse hole where we pulled this one. And then I believe that this will be going down and that will be the correct for positive and negative, but I'll double check that. All right, so now that we got that connected, now we can remove this bolt for the ground wire. It uses a Phillips and or a socket. So I'm just gonna use a Phillips head and pull that out. And then we're just gonna loop our ground wire right over it and replace it. Now, before we put all this back together, I want to verify that that fuse is in the right orientation. And so we're going to turn the car on and see if the radar detector even powers on.
X-band, K-band, Ka-band, laser.
All right, looks like it works. All right, so now we're gonna reconnect our stability control cable right here. We're gonna push all our wires over here and we'll take care of the rest of those wires here in a second. And then we're gonna put this back into place. There's these little tabs all the way across the top. We're gonna hook those in first. Just bang it in like that. We're good to go. Now let's clean up these wires at the bottom. All right, so I got it all tucked away. I got some of it right in here. And then the red part that was attached to the fuse, there are some cracks back here. You can just find them with your fingers and get them tucked away nicely.
Back up top. All right, cool. So let's talk about some things that I kind of bumped into, throughout the day, installing this into my Civic. So number one, it looks dead sexy. I love the way it looks. It looks super clean. And like I mentioned when we were installing it, I'm probably gonna go ahead and order this it's like a little piece that just hides the wire on your windshield. I'll throw a link below for that as well, because I think that's actually gonna clean it up a lot. Driving around, I've noticed with this off-brand blend mount, it doesn't do this bouncing around kind of stuff. I'll show you some footage here from when I was driving and talking in a different video. But you can see that it doesn't really do this unless you're on a really, really bumpy road. And when I say really, really bumpy, I mean washboard effect dirt road. I didn't notice it going brrr like that. So that's good. It's now been installed on my car for a little over a month and it is ran fantastically well. Every time I turn on the car, it goes through its testing procedures and it works 100% well. It was a lot easier than I anticipated to hide the wires. It was a lot easier to tap into the fuse box, which is awesome. Everything just went together seamlessly. Usually when I get into doing installs, especially with cars, things don't go as planned. But with this, everything did. Now I'm gonna give you just kind of a quick rundown on how I think this thing performs. This thing does have the K-pop or the Ka pop and the K-pop, and that's where cops are, they're sitting on the side of the road and they're waiting for people to drive by. But they don't wanna broadcast a big radar signal. So a lot of radar detectors don't pick this up. And then when it's too late, their radar detector pops on and it will catch you. This has a mode specifically for that. The other night I was driving around and I went by a cop and I'm like, wow, my detector didn't go off. What's going on? I didn't realize that I didn't have the Ka pop mode turned on. So I went home, I figured it out, turned it on, and I went right back by him and it notified me about a quarter mile before I hit him. So it's definitely performing the way that I expected. The only thing that can be annoying with this radar detector is a lot of the K-band false alarms. I mean, there's a lot of them. So I turned on the K-band filter and those false alarms for the most part have disappeared. And for the ones that haven't disappeared, like I said, you just hit that mute button. It will mark that as a false alarm. Overall, I've been impressed, but I definitely will have an in-depth review coming on this. And then in the next video that we're gonna do on the cloak of invisibility, we're going to hopefully have a laser jammer installed on this. So if you have any questions, let me know down in the comments section. Let me know what you think of the Uniden R3 if you have one as well. But until next time, guys, I love you and you stay sexy.